Okay, so you want to buy the Eiffel Tower. Here's the strange part. In 1925, a man actually did. Twice. We'll get to that. First, let's talk about who actually owns it today, and why owning one of the most famous structures on Earth is nowhere near as simple, or as profitable, as it looks from the ground. The Eiffel Tower isn't privately owned. It never has been. It belongs to the city of Paris. But the city doesn't run it day to day. That job belongs to a company called SEAT, which stands for the Société d'Exploitation de la Tour Eiffel. 99% of SEAT is owned by the city of Paris itself. The tower is operated under what's called a delegated public service contract, meaning the city hands over the keys to run the place, but keeps ownership. So how does a 135-year-old iron tower actually make money? Almost entirely off people wanting to go up it. SEAT welcomes somewhere around 6 to 6.5 million visitors every single year, making it one of the most visited paid monuments on the planet. In 2023 alone, the company brought in roughly €118 million in revenue. Add in 9 souvenir shops, restaurants run by Michelin-starred chefs, and telescope concessions on the observation decks, and almost every square foot of this thing is generating income somehow. But here's the catch. Keeping a giant iron structure standing for over a century isn't cheap, and the maintenance bill never stops. Gustave Eiffel himself recommended repainting the tower every 7 years to keep rust from eating through the iron. It takes around 60 tons of paint to do it. The most recent repainting campaign, the 20th in the tower's history, cost somewhere between 60 and 80 million euros, and took years longer than planned because of pandemic delays and lead contamination in the old paint layers. And then there's the part almost nobody saw coming. In 2020, visitor numbers collapsed to under 1.6 million people, down from nearly 6.2 million the year before. The tower shut its doors for months. In 2021, numbers barely recovered. During those 2 years, SEAT's own operating costs ran roughly 3 times higher than what the tower actually brought in. Altogether, the shortfall came to around 120 million euros. The city of Paris had to step in with emergency funding just to keep the tower's finances from collapsing entirely. So even one of the most recognizable, most visited landmarks on Earth can go from a reliable moneymaker to a financial emergency in a single bad year, if the one thing it depends on, foot traffic, disappears. Now, here's where the story gets genuinely strange, because someone actually did sell the Eiffel Tower. Sort of. In 1925, a con man named Victor Lustig checked into a Paris hotel, and had fake government stationery made up, listing himself as a deputy director at the French Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. He then wrote to some of the biggest names in the French scrap metal industry, inviting them to a secret meeting. At that meeting, Lustig told them the tower had become too expensive and too dangerous to maintain, and that the government had quietly decided to tear it down and sell it off as scrap metal. He said the sale had to stay confidential to avoid public backlash, and invited them to submit private bids for roughly 7,000 tons of iron. It worked. One of the bidders, a scrap dealer named André Poisson, was eager to break into Parisian high society, and Lustig used that ambition against him, even accepting a bribe on top of the sale price to seal the deal. Lustig took the money and disappeared before anyone realized the Eiffel Tower was never actually for sale. Poisson was too embarrassed to go to the police. And when nothing ever showed up in the newspapers, Lustig decided to try the exact same scam again a month later, on a completely different group of scrap dealers. That time, one of his marks got suspicious and called the police, and Lustig fled Paris for good. By the time he was finally caught, years later in America, running an entirely different scheme, Lustig had used more than 20 aliases, and pulled off some of the boldest cons in history. He was eventually sentenced to 20 years on Alcatraz. So somebody genuinely did sell the Eiffel Tower. Twice, actually. It's just that neither sale was real, and the man who pulled it off never owned so much as a single rivet of it. You can't actually buy the tower. Nobody legitimately ever has. But in 1925, for a brief and very expensive moment, at least 2 people in Paris genuinely believed they had.